How Christianity was influenced by older myths. Have you ever wondered about the myths and traditions that have influenced the world's largest religion, Christianity? Some Christians think that Christianity is unique to itself but don't realize that it actually has roots in much older literature and myths. In this video we'll take a look at these different influences. We will explore the specific myths that have influenced Christianity and how these influences can be seen in the central beliefs and themes of the religion. It's important to note that many of the myths and traditions that have influenced Christianity predate the religion itself and have a long and complex history. 1. The creation myth. The story of the creation of the world, as told in the book of Genesis in the Bible, has counterparts in many other ancient Near Eastern myths and stories. The biblical creation myth is believed to have been written around the 6th century BCE, although it is likely based on earlier traditions and myths. The Babylonian creation myth of Enuma Elish, and the Egyptian creation myth of Atum both date back to at least the 2nd millennium BCE. In the biblical account, God creates the world in 6 days and rests on the 7th, and creates human beings in his own image. The biblical creation myth has been influenced by various ancient Near Eastern creation myths, such as the Babylonian creation myth of Enuma Elish, which tells the story of the creation of the world by the gods Marduk and Tiamat. The Enuma Elish myth shares many similarities with the biblical account, including the creation of the world from chaos, the creation of human beings, and the establishment of the divine order. The biblical creation myth has also been influenced by the Egyptian creation myth of Atum, which tells the story of the god Atum creating the world from the primeval waters of chaos. Like the biblical account, the Atum myth emphasizes the importance of the divine word and the role of the creator god in establishing the world and its order. 2. The flood myth. The biblical flood myth is believed to have been written around the 6th century BCE, although it is likely based on earlier traditions and myths. The Epic of Gilgamesh, which tells the story of the Great Flood, is believed to date back to at least the 18th century BCE. In the biblical account, God sends a great flood to destroy the world because of the wickedness of humanity, but saves Noah and his family by instructing them to build an ark and gather 2 of every kind of animal. The biblical flood myth has roots in the ancient Near Eastern myth of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which tells the story of the great flood sent by the gods to destroy humanity. Like the biblical account, the Epic of Gilgamesh features a hero, Utnapishtim, who is warned by the god Ea to build an ark and save himself and his family from the flood. The biblical flood myth has also been influenced by the Maya flood myth, which tells the story of a great flood sent by the gods to punish humanity for their sins. In the Maya myth, the hero, Coxcox, is warned by the god Tohil to build a raft and save himself and his family from the flood. The Tower of Babel myth. The biblical Tower of Babel myth is believed to have been written around the 6th century BCE, although it is likely based on earlier traditions and myths. The Sumerian myth of the city of Eridu and the Babylonian myth of the Ziggurat of Babylon both date back to at least the 3rd millennium BCE. The story of the Tower of Babel, as told in the book of Genesis, tells the tale of a group of people who seek to build a tower that reaches to the heavens in order to make a name for themselves. God becomes angry with their pride and decides to confuse their language, causing them to be unable to understand each other and forcing them to stop building the tower. The Tower of Babel myth has roots in the Sumerian myth of the city of Eridu, which tells the story of the city's founding by the god Enki. In the myth, Enki establishes Eridu as the center of the world and the place where the gods will reside. The city is seen as a sort of tower or mountain that reaches up to the heavens. The Tower of Babel myth has also been influenced by the Babylonian myth of the Ziggurat of Babylon, which tells the story of the great ziggurat built by the king Nabu-Kudurri-Uja as a symbol of his power and a place where he could communicate with the gods. Like the Tower of Babel, the ziggurat was seen as a sort of tower or mountain that reached up to the heavens. 3. The myth of the resurrection. The belief in the resurrection of the dead is central to the Christian faith and is based on the accounts of Jesus' resurrection as told in the New Testament of the Bible. These accounts are believed to have been written between the 1st and 2nd centuries CE. The ancient Egyptian myth of Osiris, which tells the story of the god's resurrection after being killed by his brother, is believed to date back to at least the 3rd millennium. The belief in the resurrection of the dead, as central to the Christian faith, has roots in various ancient myths and traditions. In the Egyptian myth, Osiris is the god of the underworld and the judge of the dead. He is also the god of fertility and agriculture, and is associated with the cycle of death and rebirth. According to the myth, Osiris is killed by his brother Set, but is resurrected by his wife Isis, and becomes the ruler of the underworld. The Christian belief in the resurrection of Jesus is based on the accounts of Jesus' resurrection as told in the New Testament of the Bible. According to these accounts, Jesus was resurrected 3 days after his death and appeared to his followers, providing them with proof of his divinity and the truth of his teachings. In conclusion, while Christianity is a dynamic and impressive piece of literature compiled over centuries, it is not as unique as it may seem. Its influences by other predated myths make it reasonable to conclude that related biblical passages are continued developments of myths themselves. These stories can then be more practically viewed as an ongoing narrative of humanity with moral and relational depth, to be considered as humanity's best attempt at explaining the human experience at that point in time. Understanding these influences helps us to appreciate the complexity and diversity of the world's religious landscape and the ways in which different traditions have interacted and influenced one another. Thanks for watching.